Have you ever been told you're replaceable at work? That happened to me, and it lit a fire inside me like you wouldn't believe. My boss thought I was just another cog in her corporate machine, but she had no idea I was the only one who knew all the passwords that kept our entire operation running. Stay with me, I promise you'll want to hear how this all played out. Before I dive into what happened, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy workplace revenge stories. I've got plenty more where this came from. It all started 3 years ago when I joined Axis Media, a mid-sized marketing agency in downtown Chicago. I was hired as an IT specialist, but in reality, I quickly became the person who handled everything technical in the company. From setting up new employees' workstations to managing our cloud infrastructure and even troubleshooting the CEO's personal iPhone when it wouldn't connect to his Tesla. Yes, that actually happened more than once. My boss, let's call her Catherine, was the kind of person who wore power suits every day and had this way of looking at you that made you feel simultaneously insignificant and scrutinized. She had this habit of standing behind employees while they worked, breathing down their necks and offering suggestions that were really thinly veiled criticisms. Despite Catherine's management style, I loved my job. I'm naturally the kind of person who enjoys solving problems, and I took pride in keeping our systems running smoothly. Over time, I became responsible for creating and maintaining all of our company's passwords and access credentials. We're talking about everything: our server infrastructure, social media accounts, client portals, financial software, email systems, and even the door access codes to the building. What started as a standard IT role evolved into me becoming the unofficial keeper of the keys for the entire organization. I suggested multiple times that we should implement a password management system where credentials could be securely shared among key personnel, but Catherine always brushed it off. "We don't have the budget for that right now," she'd say. Or my personal favorite, "Why complicate things when the current system works fine?" The current system was me keeping track of everything, which wasn't exactly ideal from a security perspective, but I made it work. I maintained an encrypted database on my work computer with all the credentials, and I kept a secure backup that only I could access. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than the previous system of sticky notes and shared Google Docs. For 3 years, I worked tirelessly. I came in early, stayed late, and even responded to emergencies on weekends. I missed my niece's birthday party because our main server crashed. I postponed a vacation when our client portal was compromised. I put my personal life on hold countless times because the company needed me. Then came the day that would change everything. It was a Tuesday morning in March. The Chicago winter was just starting to loosen its grip, and there was a hint of spring in the air. I remember feeling optimistic as I walked into the office, coffee in hand, ready to tackle a new project we had just landed. A major website overhaul for one of our biggest clients. Catherine called me into her office around 11 a.m. I assumed it was about the new project, so I brought my tablet with some preliminary ideas I had jotted down. Her office always intimidated me. It was spotless, with minimalist furniture and not a single personal item in sight. No family photos, no plants, not even a coffee mug. Just sleek, cold efficiency. "Close the door," she said, without looking up from her computer. I sat down across from her desk, tablet in hand, ready to discuss the project. But Catherine had other plans. "We need to discuss your performance," she began, finally looking up at me with those piercing eyes. "I've been reviewing our staffing needs, and I've decided to make some changes." My heart sank. This wasn't about the new project at all. "What kind of changes?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're bringing in a consulting firm to modernize our IT infrastructure. They'll be taking over most of your current responsibilities. We'll be keeping you on in a reduced capacity, primarily to assist with the transition, and then handle basic technical support afterward." I sat there, stunned. 3 years of dedication, of solving problems no one else could solve, of being available 24/7. And this was how they thanked me. "I don't understand," I said. "Our systems are running smoothly. I've implemented several upgrades over the past year that have increased our efficiency. What's the issue?" Catherine gave me that cold smile that never reached her eyes. "It's not about your performance specifically. It's about scaling our business. This consulting firm brings expertise that goes beyond what any single person can provide." "So you're demoting me?" I asked bluntly. "I prefer to think of it as redefining your role," she replied. "Your salary will be adjusted accordingly, of course." "By how much?" I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. "30% reduction," she said, as if she were simply commenting on the weather. "But look at the bright side. You'll have more regular hours, less responsibility." I felt the blood drain from my face. A 30% pay cut would mean I couldn't make my mortgage payments. I had just bought my first home 6 months ago, partly because Catherine had assured me during my last review that I was invaluable to the company and had a bright future ahead. "Catherine, I've dedicated myself to this company. I've missed family events, postponed vacations, worked weekends, all to make sure our systems run smoothly. I've suggested improvements that have saved us thousands of dollars. How can you say I'm replaceable?" That's when she said it, the words that would echo in my mind for weeks to come. "Everyone is replaceable, Alex. That's just business." There it was, 3 years of dedication reduced to a cold business transaction. I wasn't a person who had poured my heart and soul into this company. I was just a line item on a budget spreadsheet that could be adjusted as needed. I left her office in a daze. The consulting firm would be starting the following Monday, and I was expected to provide them with all necessary information to take over my responsibilities. I had 5 days to process what had happened and decide what to do next. That evening, I sat in my living room with a glass of whiskey, contemplating my options. I could accept the demotion and pay cut, start looking for another job, or, well, there was a third option. An option that made the ethical part of my brain uncomfortable, but made the wounded, angry part feel vindicated. I remembered all the times I had suggested implementing a proper password management system, all the times Catherine had dismissed my concerns about security, all the times I had been taken for granted. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, I went to work, as usual, but with a new perspective. I started documenting everything I did, not for the consulting firm, but for myself. I created detailed notes about all our systems, where the potential vulnerabilities were, what needed regular maintenance, and which clients were particularly demanding. I also began compiling a comprehensive list of all the passwords and access credentials I managed. There were hundreds of them, from critical infrastructure to social media accounts to client portals. Some hadn't been changed in years because no one but me ever used them. By Friday, my last day before the consulting firm arrived, I had a complete picture of just how dependent Axis Media was on me. Or rather, on the knowledge I held. I had built, maintained, and secured their entire digital infrastructure, often with minimal support or recognition. That Friday afternoon, Catherine called me into her office again. The consulting firm's lead technician was there, a smug-looking guy named Brad, who had the air of someone who thought he knew everything. "Alex, this is Brad from TechForce Solutions," Catherine said. "He'll be leading the team that's taking over our IT infrastructure. I want you to hand over all necessary passwords and access credentials to him today. And then on Monday, you'll start showing him around our systems." Brad extended his hand. "Looking forward to working with you during the transition," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I shook his hand and matched his insincere smile with one of my own. Likewise, Catherine pushed a document across her desk toward me. "This is a confidentiality agreement reminding you that all company information, including passwords and access credentials, are company property. I need you to sign this before proceeding." I glanced at the document. It was standard legal jargon essentially saying that if I withheld information or sabotaged the company in any way, they could sue me into oblivion. I signed it without hesitation. I had no intention of sabotaging anything or withholding information that was legitimately requested of me. "Great," Catherine said, taking the signed document. "Now I assume you have all the passwords documented somewhere secure." This was the moment of truth. "Actually," I said, "I've been trying to tell you for years that we need a proper password management system. As I've mentioned in multiple emails and meetings, I currently maintain an encrypted database on my work computer with regular backups to ensure security." Catherine waved her hand dismissively. Yes, we can discuss implementing something more sophisticated later. For now, just provide Brad with the passwords." I took a deep breath. I'd be happy to provide Brad with all the passwords and credentials he requests. However, given that there are hundreds of them, it would be more efficient if he could tell me which systems he needs access to first, and I can provide those credentials immediately. Brad looked at Catherine, then back at me. "I'll need access to everything. All servers, all cloud services, all client portals, everything." I nodded. "Of course, let me pull up my database." I opened my laptop and pulled up my password manager. "So, which system would you like to start with?" Brad seemed annoyed. "Like I said, everything. Just export the database and send it to me." I smiled politely. "I'm afraid that's not possible with the security measures I've implemented, but I'm happy to go through them one by one. Let's start with the most critical systems." For the next hour, I provided Brad with credentials for our main servers, our cloud infrastructure, and our primary client portals. He grew increasingly frustrated with the process, but I remained calm and professional. "This is ridiculous," he finally snapped. "There has to be a faster way to do this." I have suggested implementing a company-wide password management system multiple times, I replied, looking pointedly at Catherine. It would have made this transition much smoother. Catherine had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Let's continue this on Monday. Brad, Alex will be available to assist you with anything you need." Brad closed his laptop with more force than necessary. "Fine, but I expect full cooperation." "Of course," I said with a pleasant smile. "I'm here to help." After they left, I finished up some work and prepared to leave for the weekend. Before I shut down my computer, I made sure my personal backup of all credentials was secure. I wasn't planning to withhold information. I would provide any specific credentials they asked for, but I wasn't going to make it easy for them either. The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety and anger. I alternated between feeling guilty about my plan and feeling justified. By Sunday night, I had made peace with my decision. I would comply with all direct requests for information, but I wouldn't volunteer anything beyond what was specifically asked. Monday morning arrived, and with it came the consulting team, Brad and 2 junior technicians who looked fresh out of college. Catherine introduced them to the team with much fanfare, talking about how they would revolutionize our IT infrastructure. I smiled and nodded in all the right places, playing the part of the cooperative employee. Brad immediately began making demands, asking for access to this system and that system, which I provided promptly. But he didn't know what he didn't know. He had no idea about the dozens of auxiliary systems, the backup procedures, the custom scripts I had written to automate certain processes, or the workarounds I had implemented for some of our more problematic software. By Wednesday, cracks were beginning to show. One of our major clients couldn't access their project files because Brad had changed a configuration without understanding the dependencies. Our email system was experiencing delays because he had modified the server settings without considering the impact on our archiving system. And our internal ticketing system was down completely because he didn't realize it relied on a separate database that he hadn't been given access to because he hadn't asked. Catherine called me into her office that afternoon, clearly stressed. "What's going on?" she demanded. "Why are we having so many issues?" I maintained a neutral expression. "It appears that the transition is more complex than anticipated. I'm doing my best to assist Brad and his team, but they're making changes without fully understanding our systems." "Well, make sure they understand," she snapped. "This is unacceptable." "I've provided all the information they've requested," I said calmly. "But our infrastructure has evolved over years, and much of it is interconnected in ways that aren't immediately obvious unless you've worked with it extensively." Catherine stared at me for a moment, and I could see the realization dawning in her eyes. This wasn't going to be as simple as she had thought. "Just fix it," she said finally. "Work with Brad and get our systems back to normal." "Of course," I replied. "I'll do everything I can." The rest of the week was chaotic. More systems failed as Brad and his team continued to make changes without understanding the consequences. Clients were calling, complaining about access issues and delays. The creative team couldn't access the asset library. The accounting department couldn't process invoices. It was a complete mess. By Friday, Catherine was in full panic mode. She called an emergency meeting with me, Brad, and the company's CEO, James, who had just returned from a business trip to find his company in disarray. James was furious. "What the hell is going on? I leave for 1 week, and when I come back, nothing works." Brad tried to explain that they were in a transition period and that some disruption was expected, but James wasn't having it. "We're losing money by the hour," he snapped. "Clients are threatening to take their business elsewhere. This is unacceptable." Catherine tried to deflect blame. "We're implementing a more robust IT infrastructure with TechForce. There are some growing pains, but—" James cut her off. "Growing pains? This isn't growing pains. This is a disaster." He turned to me. "Alex, you've kept our systems running smoothly for years. What's your take on this?" All eyes turned to me. This was my moment. I could throw Catherine and Brad under the bus, or I could take the high road. I chose a middle path. "Our systems are highly interconnected and have been customized over years to meet our specific needs," I explained. "Transitioning to a new management approach requires a deep understanding of these connections and customizations. I've been providing information as requested, but perhaps a more gradual transition would have been more prudent." James looked at Catherine, then at Brad, then back at me. "Can you fix this?" "Yes," I said without hesitation, "but I'll need full authority to roll back the changes that have been made and implement a proper transition plan." James didn't hesitate. "Do it. Whatever you need." Brad started to protest, but James silenced him with a look. "Your team has had a week and has only created problems. Alex has kept our systems running for years. I'm going with the proven track record." Over the weekend, I worked tirelessly to restore our systems to their previous state. I rolled back Brad's changes, reinstated the proper configurations, and got everything running smoothly again. By Monday morning, all systems were operational, and clients could once again access their projects without issues. James called me into his office first thing Monday. Catherine was there, looking uncomfortable. "Alex," James began, "I want to thank you for fixing this mess. It's clear to me now that your role here is more crucial than I realized." He shot a pointed look at Catherine, who shifted in her seat. "Catherine has informed me about the changes to your role and compensation that were planned," he continued. "Those changes are now off the table. In fact, I'd like to discuss a promotion." My heart skipped a beat. "A promotion?" James nodded. "I want you to head up a new department, information security and infrastructure. You'll have a team under you, a significant budget increase, and of course, a substantial raise." We can't afford to lose you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing, from nearly being demoted to being offered a department head position in the span of a week. "What about TechForce?" I asked, glancing at Catherine. "Their contract has been terminated," James said firmly. "Their approach clearly doesn't align with our needs." Catherine finally spoke up. "Alex, I misjudged the situation. I apologize for that." Coming from Catherine, that was practically groveling. I took a moment to consider my options. I could accept the promotion and continue working for a company that had been willing to cast me aside so easily. Or I could take this as a sign that it was time to move on. In the end, I decided to accept the promotion, but with conditions. I wanted the company to implement proper knowledge-sharing protocols, including a secure password management system. I wanted the authority to build and train a proper IT team, and I wanted a written agreement about my role and compensation that couldn't be changed on a whim. James agreed to all my conditions without hesitation. Catherine, to her credit, supported the changes and acknowledged that the previous approach had been short-sighted. It's been 6 months since then. I now lead a team of 3 IT specialists, and we've implemented proper systems and documentation for everything. No single person, not even me, holds all the keys anymore. The company is more secure and more efficient than ever before. As for Catherine, she's still my boss on paper, but the dynamic has changed. She treats me with a newfound respect, and I've noticed she's become more respectful of others as well. Perhaps the whole ordeal taught her a valuable lesson about recognizing the contributions of every team member. The irony isn't lost on me. Catherine called me replaceable, only to discover that I was anything but. It wasn't about the passwords, though those turned out to be quite important. It was about the accumulated knowledge, the understanding of our systems, and the dedication to keeping everything running smoothly. In the end, I didn't have to resort to sabotage or withholding information. Simply letting events unfold naturally was enough to demonstrate my value. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply allowing people to experience the consequences of their decisions. So if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, remember my story. Know your worth, stand your ground professionally, and let your expertise speak for itself. Sometimes that's all it takes for others to realize that you're not as replaceable as they thought. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more workplace stories and lessons learned from the corporate trenches. Hit that like button if you've ever been underestimated at work, and leave a comment sharing your own experiences. Until next time, remember your worth and never let anyone convince you otherwise.